Most of us have been taught that success belongs to the people who work the hardest, push further, sacrifice more, never stop. But what if that's only half the story? What if the qualities that make us successful can also quietly become our greatest weakness? No athlete embodied that belief more completely than Tiger Woods. But hidden inside one of the greatest careers in sports history is a question every ambitious person eventually has to answer. When does discipline stop being strength and start becoming self-destruction? I didn't always ask that question. In fact, when I played competitive golf, I wore red on Sundays because Tiger Woods wore red. Back then, I thought his greatest lesson was how to win. Looking back, I don't think Tiger's greatest lesson was how to win. I think it was learning what winning can cost. Tiger wasn't just the best golfer in the world. He was a symbol. If you've never played golf, you might not understand what the red shirt means. Tiger's mother believed red was his power color, and he wore it on Sundays, the final round of a tournament. Over time, that simple shirt became something much bigger. If Tiger walked onto the course wearing red, it usually meant he was in contention. To the fans, it inspired confidence. To many competitors, it was a reminder of what they were up against. It wasn't just clothing. It represented dominance, preparation, confidence, the expectation that when the pressure was highest, Tiger would somehow find another level. Like millions of golfers, I admired that. I wanted that kind of discipline, that kind of confidence, that kind of focus. And honestly, why wouldn't I? It worked. Tiger didn't become one of the greatest athletes in history by accident. Long before he won major championships, long before the crowds, the endorsements, and the Sunday roars, there was a little boy swinging a golf club on national television, while most children his age were still learning to tie their shoes. His father, Earl Woods, saw something extraordinary. He encouraged it. He nurtured it. He believed his son was capable of changing the game forever. Whether or not anyone agreed at the time almost doesn't matter, because belief has a way of shaping effort. And effort, repeated thousands of times, has a way of shaping greatness. Tiger practiced with a purpose most people never experience. While other kids played, he trained. While others celebrated, he prepared. Over time, the results became impossible to ignore. Junior championships, amateur dominance, professional victories, major championships. The world wasn't just watching a golfer. It was watching excellence unfold in real time. And that's where the story becomes interesting. Because everything seemed to confirm the lesson we've been taught our entire lives. Work harder, get better, success follows. For a while, it looked like the formula was perfect. Tiger wasn't simply winning tournaments. He was redefining what was possible. He made impossible shots seem routine. People didn't just wonder whether Tiger would win. They wondered by how much. Every victory strengthened the myth. Work harder, become unstoppable. But success has a way of changing something that most people never notice. At first, achievement is something you do. Eventually, it can become who you are. The world no longer saw a man who played golf. It saw Tiger Woods, an expectation, a standard, a legend. And the strange thing about becoming a symbol is that symbols aren't allowed to have ordinary days. They aren't expected to slow down. They aren't expected to struggle. They certainly aren't expected to break. I don't think that's unique to Tiger. I think that's where his story quietly begins to intersect with ours. Maybe you're not trying to win the Masters. Maybe you're trying to just build a business, provide for your family, earn a promotion, grow a YouTube channel, lead a team, support your students. Whatever your version of success looks like, people begin to associate you with it. Sometimes they expect it. Sometimes you expect it even more than they do. And without realizing it, you slowly stop saying, I work hard. You start believing, I have to, because that's who I am. That shift is almost invisible because it changes everything. For someone like Tiger Woods, success didn't remove pressure, it multiplied it. Every tournament became another expectation. Every victory became another standard to live up to. Every season invited the same question, can he do it again? The remarkable thing is, most people never stop to think about what sustained excellence actually requires. We admire the trophies. I do. The records, the championships. But those are only the visible parts of greatness. What we don't see are the thousands of decisions that came before them. The mornings when training came before comfort. The afternoons spent practicing while everyone else had gone home. The constant search for one more improvement, one more edge, one more advantage. Tiger once said there was always something to work on. At first, that sounds inspiring. It's the mindset of a champion, the refusal to settle, the commitment to continual improvement. It's one of the reasons so many people admired him, including me. But somewhere along the way, I started hearing that sentence differently. Because if there's always something to improve, when do you ever feel finished? When do you ever feel like you've done enough? For high achievers, those questions can become surprisingly difficult to answer. There's always one more email, one more project, one more promotion, one more weekend, one more late night. We tell ourselves it's temporary. It's just the season, just until things settle down, just until I reach the next milestone. But success has an interesting way of moving the finish line. The closer you get, the farther it seems to move. And before long, you're no longer chasing a goal. You're chasing a feeling, the feeling that maybe, finally, you've done enough. The problem is achievement rarely gives us that feeling for a very long time. It asks for more. Tiger's career became a powerful reminder of what relentless excellence can produce, but it also became a reminder that our bodies don't always share the same ambitions as our minds. Over the years came the injuries, the surgeries, the rehabilitation, then another comeback, another setback, another recovery. I'm not going to list every procedure or every medical report Tiger Woods had because the details aren't the story. The pattern is push, recover, push again, recover again, repeat. Most people think burnout begins the day you collapse. I don't. I think burnout begins much earlier. It begins the first time your body whispers and you convince yourself to ignore it. It begins when exhaustion becomes normal, when sleep becomes negotiable, when weekends become work days, when I'll rest later quietly becomes your philosophy. The body is incredibly patient. It absorbs, adapts, compensates until one day it can't. I don't know exactly what Tiger was thinking during those years, and neither does anyone else, but we don't need to. The facts tell the story. A body that had performed at the highest level in the world was now spending more and more time recovering instead of competing. That's not failure, that's reality. And reality has a way of teaching lessons that success sometimes hides. For years, discipline had solved almost every problem. Need to improve? Practice harder. Need to compete? Train harder. Need to come back? Work harder. It's an incredible philosophy until life presents a challenge that hard work can't solve. Eventually, every high achiever meets a limit. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's a relationship that has quietly drifted away. Sometimes it's realizing you no longer recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. The details are different. The lesson is the same. There comes a point where pushing harder is no longer the answer. And that's a difficult truth to accept, especially if pushing harder has worked your entire life. I think that's why so many ambitious people struggle with recovery. Recovery feels passive. Recovery feels unproductive. Recovery feels like falling behind. But maybe that's because we've misunderstood what recovery actually is. We've treated it like the opposite of performance, when in reality, it's part of performance. The greatest athletes in the world understand that muscles don't grow during the workout. They grow while recovering from it. The same is true for people. We don't become stronger simply by enduring more. We become stronger by giving ourselves the opportunity to rebuild. And sometimes life has a way of forcing that opportunity upon us. There are moments in life that quietly divide everything into two chapters, before and after. Sometimes you don't recognize those moments when you're living them. You only understand them when you look back. For Tiger Woods, one of those moments came in 2021. The world watched the headlines, the images, the uncertainty. People immediately began asking the same question they'd asked throughout his career. Will he come back? It's an understandable question. We admire comebacks. We celebrate resilience. We love stories where people overcome impossible odds. But this time, something felt different. After years of chasing championships, the goal wasn't another trophy. It was something much simpler. Walk again. Think about that for a moment. For decades, success had been measured by the green jacket you win from winning the Masters, from the major championships and records. Now, success was measured one careful step at a time. There's something profoundly human about that, because life has a way of stripping away our complicated definitions of success. When we're healthy, we dream about extraordinary things. When our health is taken away, we're reminded how extraordinary ordinary life really is. Being able to walk, to move without pain, to spend time with people we love, to wake up without immediately calculating what needs to be accomplished. Those things don't usually make headlines, but they're the foundation that makes every other achievement possible. I think that's one of the hardest lessons ambitious people ever have to learn. We spend years building a career while assuming our health will quietly keep supporting us in the background. Until one day, it asks for our attention. Not politely, not eventually, now. And suddenly, the things we once overlooked became the things we'd give almost anything to have back. I've seen this happen outside of sports too. The entrepreneur who misses years with their children because they're building the business. The executive who finally reaches the corner office only to discover they've been living with chronic stress for so long they no longer remember what relaxed feels like. The teacher who pours everything into helping everyone else until there's nothing left for themselves. Different careers, different lives, same pattern. We convince ourselves that today's sacrifice is buying tomorrow's freedom. Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes it quietly mortgages tomorrow instead. That's why I don't think Tiger's story is really about golf. Golf simply gave us a front row seat to something every ambitious person eventually faces. The question isn't whether discipline matters. It does. The question is whether we've asked discipline to do something it was never designed to do. Discipline can help you build a business. It cannot tell you when you've neglected your family. Discipline can help you become financially successful. It cannot decide whether you're emotionally healthy. Discipline can help you win championships. It cannot keep your body from being human. That's where wisdom enters the story. Wisdom doesn't replace discipline. It directs it. It knows when to accelerate and when to recover, and when to say yes, and when to protect what matters most, when to chase another opportunity, and when to recognize that enough is enough. That's why Tiger's story resonates so deeply. Not because he was perfect, not because he was invincible, but because, like all of us, he eventually encountered limits that determination alone couldn't erase. And limits have a way of asking questions that success never does. What actually matters? What am I protecting? What am I sacrificing? Who am I when I can't do the thing that made me successful? I don't know if we ask ourselves those questions often enough. Most of us wait until life asks them for us. After the diagnosis, after the burnout, after the relationship falls apart, after the body refuses to keep up with the schedule. But what if we didn't have to wait? What if Tiger's story isn't valuable because it tells us what happened to him? What if it's valuable because it gives us permission to ask those questions while we still have choices? Because that's the difference between reacting and living intentionally. I think that's a lesson I completely missed when I was pulling that red shirt out of my closet before tournaments. It still fits. Back then, I saw confidence. I saw intimidation. I saw a champion who never seemed to blink under pressure. I never stopped to ask what it might cost to live that way for decades. Not because Tiger did something wrong, but because every extraordinary strength carries a responsibility. If you don't manage it, eventually it begins managing you. And maybe that's the hidden price of greatness. Not the trophies, not the expectations, not even the injuries. The hidden price is believing that the same mindset which helped you climb the mountain is the only mindset capable of helping you live there. For a lot of us, that's simply not true. Building something requires intensity. Keeping it often requires wisdom. And wisdom usually sounds very different than ambition. It says, Go home, take the vacation, turn off the phone, see the doctor, eat the dinner while it's still warm, watch your kids' game, take the walk, get some sleep. None of those things look impressive on social media though, do they? None of them earn standing ovations, but they're often the very habits that allow success to last. That's why I believe we've misunderstood resilience. Resilience is improving how much punishment you can absorb. Resilience is building a life that doesn't require constant recovery from the way you're living. That's a completely different definition, and I think it's a much healthier one. There was a time when I thought the goal was to become more like Tiger Woods. Work harder, practice longer, stay focused, never let up. And to be honest, those lessons helped me. They probably helped many of us. Discipline matters, preparation matters, commitment matters. Tiger's story doesn't teach us otherwise. But somewhere along the way, many of us quietly added something that was never part of the lesson. We stopped measuring ourselves by who we were. We started measuring ourselves by what we produced. And once that happens, rest begins to feel like failure. Until one day we wake up and realize we've become incredibly successful at surviving a life we no longer have time to enjoy. That's the tragedy burnout rarely announces. It doesn't always take away your career. Sometimes it takes away your ability to experience it. You can sit in a house you worked your whole life to afford without ever feeling at home. You can achieve everything you once dreamed about while quietly forgetting why you dreamed about it in the first place. That's why I don't think burnout is really the enemy. Burnout is the warning light. The real danger is believing your worth is something you have to earn over and over and over again. That's a race no one ever wins. So we tell ourselves, later I'll slow down, later I'll travel, later I'll take care of myself, later I'll spend more time with the people I love. The problem with later is that life has a habit of becoming now. Sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, sometimes because our bodies make the decision for us. Tiger's story reminds us of something uncomfortable. Even extraordinary discipline couldn't change the fact that he was still human. Our bodies need rest. Our minds need stillness. Our relationships need time. Our lives need more than productivity. And that's not weakness. That's reality. Maybe the strongest people aren't the ones who can ignore the signs the longest. Maybe they're the ones wise enough to recognize them early. Maybe we've misunderstood resilience. Maybe resilience isn't measured by how much punishment you can absorb. Maybe it's measured by how often you build recovery into the life you're trying to sustain. I still think about that red shirt years ago. I'm still wearing it. It represented one thing: victory, confidence, the expectation that greatness was about to happen. Today, it reminds me of something completely different. Not what greatness can accomplish, but what greatness can quietly cost. There's nothing wrong with pursuing extraordinary things. I hope you build a business, write the book, lead the team, create something that outlives you. Just don't lose the person who started the journey, because success was never meant to replace your life. It was meant to enrich it. Maybe that's Tiger Woods' greatest lesson. Not how to win, but remembering why you wanted to win in the first place. If you're having issues with burnout right now, you're going to want to watch this video next, because it'll add more to what you can do in your life to make a difference. I'll see you there.